In recent weeks, the whole world has witnessed a controversy that has put South Africa in the spotlight. In May, during an official visit to the United States, the South African delegation was taken aback by comments made by US President Donald Trump. He said that white genocide was taking place in the country and questioned the way the white minority is treated. The reaction was immediate. The South African government denied the accusations and canceled part of its official agenda in the United States. This situation only showed that the problems there are much older. While leaders from outside say that whites are being persecuted, the South African government says that all violence is a crime and that no one suffers persecution because of the color of their skin. But are racial conflicts really the only problem? Behind these headlines, is there a country facing even greater challenges? This video is part of our series, What's Happening?, where we show the reality of countries that everyone thinks they know, but almost no one knows how they really are. Today on Bello Mundo, we go beyond the famous image of South Africa. We'll put aside memories of the 2010 World Cup and the name of Nelson Mandela, and take a closer look at what's really happening there. Number 1. Racial tensions. We begin our tour today by talking about a problem that is right in front of everyone, but that many people still avoid facing. South Africa still bears the deep scars left by apartheid. If you don't remember or have never heard of it, let me explain quickly. For centuries, African peoples were dominated and exploited by European countries. In the case of South Africa, this became official policy with apartheid, which was a regime of racial segregation. It prevented black people from living in the same neighborhoods, attending the same schools, and even using the same bathrooms as white people. The idea was to keep everything separate and the white minority always in control. This was not unique to South Africa. In the United States, for example, until the mid-20th century, there were also laws that separated blacks and whites, especially in southern states. This theme has appeared in several films, such as The Help and Mississippi Burning, which show the harsh reality of segregation and extremism. In South Africa, this system officially lasted until 1994, when Nelson Mandela was elected the country's first black president. With that, apartheid ended, and hope for a new era emerged. A more just South Africa, where all races would have equal rights. But this promise, in practice, is far from being realized. The issue gained prominence again after an official visit by a South African delegation to the United States. During the meeting, President Donald Trump accused the South African government of persecuting whites because of its land reform policy. This plan has been under discussion since 2018 and allows the government to take land without paying compensation, with the proposal to redistribute it to black families who have historically been denied land rights. This debate is directly linked to a very clear reality. The South African population is mostly black, more than 80%, but most of the agricultural land remains in the hands of a white minority. For many South Africans, this reform is seen as an attempt to repair some of the injustices of the past. However, not everyone agrees with the way it is being carried out. White farmers report threats, invasions, and episodes of violence. International human rights groups are monitoring the situation closely, while the government insists that there is no organized persecution of any group. The central point is that the land dispute is not just a political issue. It touches on deep wounds. It awakens memories of exclusion, humiliation, and inequality that remain present in the lives of millions of people. And when these tensions rise, they end up affecting other areas that also need urgent attention. 3 decades after the end of apartheid, the dream of a so-called rainbow nation, where all races live together in harmony with justice and equal opportunities, seems increasingly distant. The promise of unity has not yet become a reality for a large part of the population. Today, South Africa remains a deeply unequal country. Rich and poor people live in completely different worlds. In many places, whites and blacks remain separated by barriers that do not appear on the map, but are felt every day. Inequality remains strong, and Nelson Mandela's legacy, built on peace, justice, and reconciliation, has weakened over time amid corruption scandals, political infighting, and mismanagement. Number 2. Never-ending blackouts. In addition to social tensions, South Africa faces a basic problem that affects everyone's daily life: a lack of energy. There, power cuts are so frequent that they even have a name. The government calls them load shedding, which means something like load relief. In practice, these are scheduled blackouts to prevent the total collapse of the electrical system. Since 2023, these outages have become so severe that the government has declared a state of emergency. Some people have gone without electricity for up to 10 hours a day. Factories have shut down, schools have suspended classes, traffic lights have been turned off, and hospitals have been running on generators. The main cause lies in the dependence on old, poorly maintained, coal-fired power plants. Many were built during the apartheid era. In addition, Eskom, the state-owned power company, has been embroiled in corruption scandals for years. Investigations point to cable theft, contract fraud, and internal sabotage, especially during the administration of Jacob Zuma, who was president from 2009 to 2018. Despite promises of a solution, blackouts returned with a vengeance in early 2025. In the worst-case scenario, the population can go without power for up to 16 hours a day. Companies have shifted shifts to the early hours of the morning, schools have canceled classes, and many businesses have closed their doors. The impact goes beyond infrastructure. The problem disrupts the economy, reduces jobs, and increases costs for security, generators, and alternative energy. And when basic infrastructure fails, other social problems multiply, such as unemployment, which has reached alarming levels in South Africa. Number 3. Economic inequality and unemployment. In every corner of the country, what you hear most are stories of people trying but failing, trying to work, study, and grow. According to Reuters, one of the world's leading news agencies, more than 60% of young South Africans were out of work at the beginning of 2025. That's a lot of people standing still, with no income and no prospects, and the number is only growing. Overall unemployment is also among the worst in the world, with more than 30% of the adult population out of work. Even those who finish high school face difficulties. Those who don't finish have little chance. And when an entire generation has no prospects, social tension explodes. Protests become commonplace. Crime rises. Drug trafficking gains ground. Young people who could be building the country's future end up lost in a social limbo. The government has launched aid and training programs, but the scale of the problem is enormous. Millions of people need opportunities in an economy that simply cannot absorb so many people. And speaking of the economy, the overall situation in the country is not looking good either. Number 4. Economy in free fall. South Africa was once considered the economic engine of Africa. Today, it is a country struggling not to sink into a permanent recession. Economic growth has been virtually zero in recent years. The rand, the local currency, has lost more than 20% of its value against the dollar since 2020. Inflation rose above 7% in 2023 and continues to put pressure on the cost of living for families. Foreign investment has shrunk by more than 50% in the last 5 years, according to a World Bank survey. The blackouts we mentioned earlier cost the economy billions of dollars. In 2023 alone, The country had more than 284,000 hours of scheduled power cuts, the highest number in history. Multinational companies have canceled projects, mining companies have reduced production, and the service sector has entered a recession. The situation is so serious that even the tourism industry, one of the country's main sources of income, is suffering. Hotels without power, airports with problems, poor infrastructure. Who wants to visit a country where the lights can go out at any moment? International banks have downgraded the country's credit rating, and with each passing day it becomes more difficult to emerge from this crisis. And when the economy stops, everything else collapses along with it. Poverty increases, inequality grows, and insecurity becomes routine. Number 5. Crime and urban violence. Public safety is one of South Africa's most pressing issues. The country faces extremely high levels of crime, including organized crime, kidnappings, robberies, murders, and street violence. The most alarming fact? There are currently more than 2,700,000 private security guards registered in the country, compared to only 150,000 police officers. In other words, there are almost 20 times more security guards than public servants responsible for maintaining order. High rates of poverty, inequality, unemployment, and social exclusion help explain the situation. When all this is compounded by energy crises, racial tensions, and economic instability, the result is explosive. Cities such as Johannesburg and Cape Town are among the most violent in the world. Entire families live behind high walls, electric fences, and cameras on all sides. It is a routine of fear. The official homicide rate is frightening: 45 murders per 100,000 inhabitants. That means about 75 violent deaths per day. The number exceeds that of many countries at war and places South Africa alongside nations such as Honduras in the violence rankings. And what is most serious, only 1 in 10 cases is solved by the police. The murder of young soccer star Luc Fleurs in 2024 exposed the reality. He was killed as he left a gas station in Johannesburg. If even elite athletes are not safe, what is left for ordinary citizens? Number 6. Poor public health. More than 2 decades after the end of apartheid, healthcare in South Africa is still marked by a glaring social divide. Wealthy South Africans have access to cutting-edge care in private hospitals. Meanwhile, millions of poor people, mostly black, face long lines, poor infrastructure, and a constant shortage of doctors, medicines, and basic supplies in public hospitals. The inequality is striking. Private clinics boast state-of-the-art technology. Government hospitals, on the other hand, operate with broken computers, leaky rooms, and exhausted staff. Diseases such as tuberculosis, HIV, and tropical diseases continue to kill due to lack of access to adequate treatment. And the problem is not just infrastructure, it is also distance. In many rural areas, the nearest hospital is hours away, and ambulances may not even arrive. To try to address this situation, the government has proposed a bold plan. The National Health Plan, known by its Spanish acronym NHI, aims to integrate the public and private systems and create universal health insurance. But the estimated cost of this exceeds $2 billion a year until 2026. Critics are asking, how can such a sweeping reform be financed amid so many other national emergencies? While the debate continues, the people wait. They wait for care, for medicine, for answers, and they continue to trust, even when public services can barely offer the bare minimum. In practice, what we see is a population divided between those who can pay for healthcare and those who must pray for care. Number 7. Mining tragedies. In South Africa, even what should be a source of wealth has become synonymous with tragedy. Mining, one of the pillars of the national economy since the 19th century, still generates billions from the extraction of gold, platinum, diamonds, and coal. But behind the scenes of this industry, workers live a daily life of risk, neglect, and silence. In May 2025, an incident exposed the extent of the problem. An elevator plummeted in a gold mine owned by Sibanye-Stillwater, leaving 260 workers trapped nearly a kilometer underground for about 24 hours. The accident only came to light after pressure from unions. The company itself had not informed the authorities. Everyone was rescued alive, but the exposure was brutal. Mines with precarious structures, outdated systems, maintenance failures, and almost non-existent oversight. The workers' accounts are harsh. For hours, there was no water, food, or sign of rescue. And most alarmingly, this was not an isolated case. In recent years, collapses, explosions, and accidents due to lack of equipment have caused hundreds of deaths and permanent injuries. The promise of wages is attractive, but the reality is costly. Those who descend into the tunnels know that every day is like Russian roulette. The sector, which should be a source of pride, has become a portrait of inequality. Companies make billions, shareholders celebrate, but the workers who extract the wealth from the ground have little safety or decent medical care. Ultimately, South African mining still drives the economy, but it comes at a high cost, not just in dollars and cents, in lives. Number 8. Systemic corruption and political instability. Ultimately, everything we have seen, blackouts, dilapidated schools, collapsing hospitals, mining tragedies, has one thing in common: corruption. Because when public money disappears, the whole country feels it. And in South Africa, this misappropriation has become routine. More than $7 billion in suspected kickbacks are under investigation. The list of agencies involved is frightening. Transnet, responsible for trains; Denel, the state-owned arms manufacturer; Eskom, which manages electricity; South African Airways, the national airline, and even the public lottery. Almost nothing is left untouched. This scandal became known as state capture, a nice name for something ugly. Politicians and business people took advantage of their positions to gain personal benefit. The scheme reached its peak during the Jacob Zuma administration, when overpriced contracts, suspicious concessions, and embezzlement became part of the system. The results were swift. There were power outages, medicine shortages in hospitals, food shortages in schools, lack of maintenance on train lines, insecurity on the streets, and disrespect for those working in the mines. It was a chain reaction, and all because, long ago, someone thought it was more advantageous to steal than to govern. Politically, the bomb exploded at the polls. In 2024, the ANC, Mandela's party that had ruled since the end of apartheid, lost its absolute majority in parliament for the first time. The population had had enough. It was the last straw. Now, unlikely coalitions are emerging, protests are taking place in the streets, and a question echoes on every corner, on every social network, in every neighborhood that feels abandoned. Who is going to clean up this mess? Because the truth is clear. If the top rots, the rest falls apart. As we reach the end of this journey, it is clear that South Africa today is a country at a crossroads. After seeing the crises, challenges, and contradictions of the real South Africa, the question remains: does this reality match the image you had of the country? Or did it take you by surprise? Tell us in the comments. If you enjoyed this dive into South African reality, leave a like, share it with those who still have a romanticized view of the country, and subscribe here at Bello Mundo so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you for joining us here. See you at the next stop.